Okay. The important news is I'm moving the second exam again.
What?
Some of you will be really disappointed. I'm moving it till next Wednesday, a week from today. It won't have any more material on it. It'll just give you more time to be ready. Okay. And since Wednesday is normally our Hangout night, I'm going to move the Hangout to Tuesday at 7 p.m. Since I'm hoping that by Tuesday you will be studying and have lots of questions. I know Haley is planning on being ready by Tuesday. Okay. Any questions about that? So you heard it first here.
Thank you.
But wait, there's more. Okay. I don't know if you noticed, but the modules on the different market structures, perfect competition and monopoly and monopolistic competition and oligopoly, there's a lot there. Have you noticed?
Like content or?
Content, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it covers a lot of ground.
Wait till you see how much our study guides are.
What's that?
I said, wait till you see how long our study guides are.
Okay, so I'm not going to give you my study guide, but what I am going to give you is my lecture notes for that material, in which I cover everything once and only once. Okay? Now, I would love to say that I'm going to have those lecture notes by tomorrow. This is where Maeve usually smiles. And it may yet happen, because after all, the night is young. But it may not be until Friday, okay? So, but one of these days, soon, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them up on the course outline where originally it said new chapter 9, and I made that go away because I didn't have it. But that's where it's going to go, all right? So if it's not up, if you can't find it in 2 days, let me know, and I will make sure that it's available, and I will make sure that you get it. So this doesn't mean don't study the modules. What it means is use these notes to guide your studying, okay? So these notes basically look at that content the way I look at the content, and then you can use the modules to get the details that I don't have there, because I know you can go look at the modules. So for example, I'm not going to define what a demand curve is because I know you already know that, or you can look it up, right? So that's the kind of thing that I don't flesh out in a lot of detail. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about what is a monopoly because, again, you know that or you can look it up. All right. Okay. You look very adult tonight, Maeve, I have to say, as opposed to your tutoring look, which is kind of different.
Okay.
Fair statement?
Maybe?
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Poor Mohammed, he didn't get here in time, and he just sent me an email. Awesome. He is watching live. Way to go, Mohammed. Okay. Nobody tell him the big news, in case so hopefully he will have missed it. No, kidding. All right. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I want to highlight here. One is it's really important that you guys understand what allocative efficiency means, and also productive efficiency, but allocative efficiency is more important. This is the answer to the question, what's so perfect about perfect competition? The answer is that perfect competition is the only market structure which is allocatively efficient, and it's the only market structure which is consistently productively efficient. Now, I haven't explained what those things are yet. I like to give you the answer first before I give you the explanation. Okay, so that's the answer. Okay, now let's explain what that means. We're going to do it with a graph, of course, if I can find my graph. It's the same graph I think I showed you last week, but now we're just going to interpret it in a slightly different way. Here we go. All right. Can you see this graph? Or is it, do I need to raise it? Anybody see the graph?
Could you be a little closer? Well, maybe a little further. Yeah, it's good.
Like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the graph of any firm which is not perfectly competitive. It looks the closest like the graph in the monopoly module, but really it applies to oligopoly or monopolistic competition as well. Okay. Now, let's see if there's an No, I know what I can do. I can share my screen with you so that I can talk and show you at the same time. So let me see if I find that. That's sort of rhetorical. I know where it is. Not that one, not that one. All right. Open recent documents. There it is. He says, hopefully. Except he pulled up the wrong file. Okay, we won't be doing that one. Let's look at the other one. So if this was a perfect video, we'd be doing it in a studio. And when I mess things up, then it would be easy for me to go back and redo it so that when people watch the recording, it would be perfect. But that's not what we're going to do here. All right. Is that right? Yes. Okay. This is going to work. Now let me just share my screen. Not chat. Screen share. Entire screen. Entire screen. This is weird. It's not letting me. Entire screen. Now this is bizarre. Why isn't it letting me do this? Let's try this. No. How about this? How about this? All right. Did that work? You see the graph? Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, good. So this is the basic graph with the basic set of curves. Okay. The demand, we start with the demand curve. Now, forget about the cost curves for the moment. Pretend they're not there. If the firm wants to maximize its profits, how does it choose its level of output? What Q does it supply? Everybody is being diplomatic. You guys don't know?
Is it where MR equals MC?
That is correct. So right here, right?
Yeah.
The marginal revenue curve is going down. The marginal cost curve is going up. The answer to the question, how much does the firm want to supply, is almost always where MR equals MC. So the first thing you do after you have your demand curve is you draw your marginal revenue curve, which is always under the demand curve. You draw the marginal cost curve, and where the two curves intersect right here, that is the profit maximizing quantity of output. Okay? Now, what price will this firm charge for this quantity?
It goes up until it meets where that would be on the demand curve.
Correct. The demand curve shows, I mean, think about it. The demand curve shows for any quantity, how much do people think it's worth? How much are they willing to pay, right? So if this is the quantity right here on the x-axis, you go up to the demand curve and you go over and you read the price line right off of there. All right? Okay, now, if a business, any business is successful, they're successful because they've created value. They have a product that customers value. okay, we can use this graph to actually measure how much the value is, okay? In fact, that reminds me of something else. Hold on just 1 second. I may have a slightly better graph of this. That's what I was playing around with yesterday as I was trying to get my lecture notes ready for you guys to take a look at. Where did that go? There it is. Let me look at this. Let's see if this is a better graph. Maybe, maybe not. All right, I have another idea about where we might get a better graph. Let's do this. What I'm actually looking for is a graph that has the quantity and the price in it already. So you wouldn't have to use as much imagination as I've been asking you for. And I think I know where that graph is. He says confidently, let's see. All right. Okay, Lindsay. Lindsay's trying to get in. And you guys have all the seats. Isn't that exciting? All right. Okay, let me try to get Lindsay into the story here. Not there. Not here. Okay, Lindsay, where are you? Lindsay. That's interesting. Aha. Nope. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. Hi, Lindsay. And Hannah. You can watch using YouTube Live. Okay, we'll fire that off and we'll get back to the story here. Hey, Mohammed, how do they find it on YouTube Live? Can you send me a direct message so that I can forward that to them if you get a chance? That would be very helpful. Okay, now let's pull up that file and this is not what I wanted. I wanted a different one. Well, maybe this will work. Yeah, this will work. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna switch the screen share to another file, one that has the lines drawn in. And I do appreciate your patience here. Okay, try again. And we'll do application window. And we'll do this one. And we'll share. Okay, do you guys see that? Anybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this is the same graph, except it has the quantity identified, Q star. Notice that it's where MR equals MC, just like we said. And then you can go up to the demand curve, and you can read off the price, which is P star. Okay, now the point that I made initially was that that you can actually measure the value that the firm is providing when it supplies this product. Okay, the way you do that is remember that the demand curve shows what people think it's worth. Okay, hold on. Mohammed just responded. Mohammed, you get an A+ for the day for helping me out here. And Lindsay, let me shoot this over to Lindsay. There we go. Okay. So the demand curve shows what people think the product is worth. Okay. So the first unit of output is worth a lot up here. The second is worth a little less. The third is worth a little less. The fourth is worth a little less, all the way on down to the last unit, which is right here, the last unit which is supplied, which is worth P star. So what that tells us is the value of the product is the area under the demand curve up to the quantity, right? So it's this odd-shaped polygon. All right, so it would go from 0 to this intercept to point E down to Q star. So that's the value which is created when the firm supplies this product. But we know that they don't, no, let me say it differently. I was going to say they don't supply it for free. What I meant to say is it costs something for the firm to produce this product. And the cost is shown by the firm's average cost curve, okay? So what we're going to do now, just to give you a little heads up, is we're going to take that total value, the area under the demand curve up to Q star, and we're going to split it 3 ways. The first split is what does it cost to produce? And that's actually shown on the graph by the average cost curve. So you start from the quantity and you say, what is the average cost of producing this many units? And you go straight up until you hit the average cost curve. And then you read it off the left-hand side. Okay. Main screen is, yes. So, oh, is everybody seeing the graph right now? Because Trisha is having problems, she said. Help me out here, guys. Say something.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. All right, let me just raise it up there, see if that helps a little bit. Okay, so what is the cost of creating this overall value? The answer is it's the average cost of production times the quantity. So it's costing this many dollars per unit times all of these units. And so the total cost is represented by the area of this rectangle right here. Okay, now that still leaves a lot of value that needs to be divided up. So what we have, let's start from the top. This triangle is called the consumer surplus. Okay, this rectangle is called the producer surplus. What's the other name for producer surplus?
Profit.
It's profit, yeah. Okay, so the idea is this area, this large area, is the economic value that comes from what we spent in terms of the cost. That economic value is divided into the producer surplus, which is the rectangle here, and the consumer surplus, which is the triangle across the top. Okay? Consumer surplus is a really important concept, but it's actually something that you guys already know. Okay? What it is a fancy term for getting a good deal, because this is value that you get that you didn't have to pay for. Remember, the product is worth this much to you, right? You had to pay this much, some of which went to the firm in the form of profit, and the other of which went to the cost of production. But the area of this triangle, the consumer surplus, is value that you got above and beyond the price. So it's a measure of how good a deal you got. Okay. Everybody got that? Anybody have questions? So nobody got it, but nobody has questions. Got it. Okay, good. All right. No, seriously, if you have questions, now would be a good time to ask.
What did you say the first box was? What it represented?
Down here,
Yes.
the lowest one is total cost. It's
Okay.
average cost times quantity. If we put numbers here, suppose the quantity is 15 units of output and the average cost is $10 per unit. So then it would be $10 times 15 is is $15. $10 times 15 is $150. Sorry, my math is a problem here. All right, Sam just sent an email. Can't see the graph, she says. Oh, I know what the problem is. Okay. All right. So what happens is when you guys talk, you take over control. So let me see if that helps. Can you see the graph again? Anybody?
Yes.
Maeve, can you see the graph? Okay, good. All right. Now, back to the question of efficiency. All right. When we talk about productive efficiency, what we mean is the firm producing at minimum average cost? What we can show is that in the long run, under perfect competition, firms will produce at the lowest point on their average cost curve. That's part of the reason why we say they're perfectly efficient. But what you should be able to see from this graph is the point where average cost is the minimum is right over here. It's at this quantity, but the quantity that firms are producing is somewhat less than that at Q star, right? So if you go up to the average cost curve, you can see we're not at the absolute minimum point of the average cost curve. We're right here. So that's a measure of the inefficiency, the difference between the average cost we're incurring and the minimum average cost, which would be down here. Now, the way this firm is operating, according to the graph, is it's not that big a difference, but it's still a difference. Okay. What that means is that we're operating sort of wastefully. We're not minimizing our cost. Okay. Now, allocative inefficiency is more important. Allocative inefficiency asks the question, are we producing the right quantity of output? In other words, are we choosing what's best for society? Okay, the answer to that question is always where demand intersects marginal cost, right here. This is the quantity. Okay, now this is the answer. Let me try to explain it to you. All right. We know that if the firm wants to maximize profit, they choose the level of output where MR equals MC right here. I just told you that the allocatively efficient quantity is right here where demand equals, or demand crosses marginal cost. So that would be a higher quantity right here. Okay, let me show you why Q star is not the best. Okay, so here is the question. The firm is maximizing profits at Q star. Think about one more unit of output. So that would be Q star plus 1. If Q star were 15, we're talking about the 16th unit of output. The question is anybody in the market willing to pay more for that 16th unit of output than it would cost this firm to supply the product? Do you understand what I'm asking? The cost of producing the 16th unit, one more, is one step up the marginal cost curve, right? Because the marginal cost curve shows the additional cost of producing one more unit. The value to somebody is shown by the demand curve. Okay, so you would go from quantity equal to 16, you go up to the demand curve. And what you should be able to see is the demand curve is above the marginal cost curve. What that literally means is somebody would be willing to pay more than it would cost to produce that product. If the firm produced that product, they could sell it at some price that would be good for the customer and would be good for the firm. It would be higher than the marginal cost and it would be lower than the demand curve. So if they did this, both parties would be better off. In fact, if we picked a price right here where demand and marginal cost intersect, and we drew the price line across here, though it's not there, but just imagine that, then there's a triangle from this point to here to E and back down again That's value that is there potentially for customers, but which they don't get because the firm didn't produce enough. It stopped at Q star. Furthermore, if we go below the price line, there's profit that the firm could earn. If you think about the area above the marginal cost line and below the price, so it's kind of a triangular shape, that's profit that the firm could earn if it was willing to produce those extra units of output. But because it's not, the result is what we call a deadweight loss, a deadweight efficiency loss. This is not just a technical term. It literally represents value shown by this area that could be split between the producer and the consumers, but which instead neither of them gets because the firm isn't willing to produce more than Q star. So when we talk about inefficiency, and every market, every firm in virtually every industry, that is any industry which is not perfectly competitive, operates inefficiently this way. So when you add up all that inefficiency, there's a lot of lost value going on that we could be capturing somehow if firms could be persuaded to produce a little more. Okay, so that's what allocative efficiency means. Does anybody have questions about that? Does that make sense, Maeve? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so let me show you the solution to this efficiency problem. Suppose the firm set its price at P star. How many units of output would it sell? Come on now, this is easy. Haley, how many units of output would it sell if it set the price here at P star? What's the demand for P star at P star?
Q star.
It's Q star, right. So it sells Q star units, and then tomorrow it says, we're having a sale. We're now going to charge this lower price right here. Then it would sell all these extra units that it didn't sell at the price P star. Do you see that? That's called price discrimination. Firms love to price discriminate because it raises their profits. But wait a minute. If they can sell more and earn more profits, then why did we say Q star is going to maximize their profits? Do you see that's a contradiction, sort of? How do we resolve that contradiction? Anybody know?
Total profits.
What about it? We said that Q star and P star will maximize the profits for the firm. And then we said, yes, but if they sell this many, they'll actually make even more profit. So how can both of those be right?
Because won't the costs go up as well?
They do. They go up, the marginal cost curve. But until they reach this point, there's still, the price is still greater than the marginal cost. And so the firm will make money by selling those extra units, right?
Yeah.
So how do we resolve the contradiction? You see there's a contradiction there. Q star can't both be the highest profit and not the highest profit.
Right.
The answer is, without telling you, I changed the rules of the game. Okay? So the rules correctly spelled out are, if the firm has to charge the same price to every customer, if the firm can only charge one price to every customer, then they will get the most profits if they sell Q star and they charge P star. But if they don't have to charge the same price to every customer, if they're allowed to price discriminate, then they can raise their profits even more. First, they charge the regular price and they get all the suckers willing to pay the regular price. And then they say, oh, we're going to have a sale now. And we'll sell it to the people who weren't willing to pay the regular price, but are now willing to get it on sale. Notice that when they do that, everybody is better off, in the sense that the people who didn't get the product at all when it was costing P star, now they get the product, and the firm gets additional profit in the process of that. So it's kind of a win-win all the way around. There's only one group of people who are likely to be dissatisfied. Who are they?
Those that didn't get the sale price.
Yeah, those that paid full price for it. Okay. Here's a good example. What's the price of an airline ticket? The answer is it depends. It depends on a lot of stuff. What are the odds that the person sitting next to you in the airplane paid the same price as you, or did they pay a different price? Is that possible, that they paid a different price? Either you guys don't travel enough or you don't think enough about the economics of what's going on. The answer is people pay all kinds of prices depending on whether they get their ticket through Travelocity or they go directly with the airline, or, I mean, it's crazy, right? So the airline always wants to charge the most it can get away with. And if you're willing to pay that, they're willing to charge it, and they'll make more money that way. But they also make money on the smart shoppers, because those are seats on the airplane that wouldn't be sold unless they were discounted. And that's how firms play a more sophisticated kind of game and end up making even more profit. Okay? So there's more like that in the notes that I'm going to share with you guys. Okay, now you all look really shell-shocked. So let me ask again, do you guys have any questions?
I know in the last test there was some application of an actual formula where we had to work out a table and then answer questions based on that.
You mean the marginal utility problem?
Yeah. Are we looking at something similar like that, or just on a smaller scale because of the volume of the content this time around?
No, that was a particular kind of problem. What I could imagine giving you is a scenario and saying, suppose there's an airline, okay, and I give you what the costs and revenues are for 4 flights a day, and I ask you, does it make sense for the airline to fly one more flight, right? The way you would figure that out is look at the marginal revenues and compare with the marginal costs. Okay. As long as MR is greater than MC, the firm makes money if it flies the extra flight. Okay. But in that case, I wouldn't care about you calculating the exact profit numbers. What I really want to know is conceptually if you understand whether or not they should fly the airplane. That's a good question, by the way.
Thank you.
Other questions?
This isn't related to anything that, well, it's semi-related. So in the modules, I keep getting questions that have like in my pretest and on my like quizzes, I keep getting questions that have graphs on them.
Yes.
But it doesn't give me any labels. So it's like automatically I assume that X is like our
quantity
and Y is the price, but it'll give me a question and be like, what's the profit? But it'll be like 2, 20, 30, 40, like they go up by an increment, but my options are in like 1,000 or 100. So do I just assume they're going by tens and like I add a 0 to whatever they have, or?
Probably.
Okay.
What you should do though is send me an example, take a screenshot, and I can give you an exact answer on that.
Okay.
We are actually working to improve the questions and make them clearer. And so any of those that you identify would be great.
Okay.
That was a good question, actually.
Thank you.
Could you possibly go over the shutdown point graph?
Sure. Okay. The shutdown point is the exception to the rule that firms should always produce where MR equals MC. So let me find that graph. Here it is. Maybe. Okay, I can make this work. All right, let me share this again. All right, let me show you first what I'm gonna do. Let me show you what we're gonna do, and then I'll actually do it for you. Okay, let's go back to the graph that you're familiar with that we've been working on. Okay, see the graph? It's the same one. Yes. Anybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So let's suppose that demand for this firm's product falls. The demand curve shifts to the left. The marginal revenue curve shifts to the left. Okay. What about the cost curves? Marginal and average cost, do they shift? The answer is no, because nothing happened to the firm's factory. You're still in the same factory, so you have the same cost curves. Okay, now we may be operating at different points on the cost curves, but the cost curves don't shift in response to demand. Okay, so imagine that the demand curve and the marginal revenue curve are shifting to the left, and we're essentially going to be sliding down the marginal cost curve. Now let me fast forward here, literally through a couple of pages, and show you what it looks like. Actually, this is part way. So at this point, notice that the demand curve is just touching average cost at the profit maximizing quantity. So what's the relationship between price and average cost at Q double star? Well, you can read it over here. Price and average cost are the same. We call that the break-even point. So the firm is earning 0 economic profits there because price just is enough to cover average cost. Suppose demand falls even further, which is what could happen during a recession. Okay. If the firm wants to operate where MR equals MC, which is always the first choice, what you notice is the demand is not enough to cover your costs, right? So the firm is actually losing money. Whatever the firm does, it's going to lose money here. So in this scenario, the objective switches from choosing the level of output that will maximize profit to choosing the level of output that will minimize the loss. Again, the first thing you want to look at is MR equals MC. All right, so here's the price, but here's the average cost. So we're losing this many dollars, the area of the upper rectangle there. So instead of being a profit, it's a loss here. Okay, now the shutdown point occurs where demand just equals, just touches the average variable cost. This AC curve is the average total cost. We know the average variable cost has a similar shape, but is lower than this. So let me sketch it out. It's going to look like this. It's going to come down. Let's suppose it touches right here, and then it flattens out and hits its minimum point, and then it starts going up on the other side again. Okay. The shutdown point is going to be right here, where the average variable cost curve just touches the demand curve at that quantity. In other words, price just equals average variable cost. So that's the short answer to your question, Mar. Where price just touches average variable cost, that's the shutdown point. Now here's what's going on here. At this point, you're able to bring in just enough dollars to cover your variable costs of operation, right? So what that means is you can pay for your materials, you can pay for wages for the workers, but you can't pay any of the rent on the factory, okay? So at that point, it's you're kind of indifferent between staying open and closing. Think about this. If you continue to operate, you owe the rent, 100% of the rent, right? Because you can only cover your variable costs. What if you shut down and lay your workers off? Well, then you still owe the rent, 100% of the rent, right? So either way, you lose the same amount, right? Let's suppose that the demand curve falls even further, so you can't even cover your average variable costs. So your ABC curve is above the demand curve. Well, then, if you continue to operate, you have to pay all your variable costs, but you can't even cover those. So you can pay some of the variable costs, but not all of them. And then in addition, you have to pay the fixed cost. So you're losing a lot of money there. In that case, if you shut down and lay off your workers, all you have to pay is the fixed cost. So in that case, shutting down, which means producing zero, is the right choice because that will minimize your loss there.
And is that in the short run or the long run?
This is all in the short run.
Okay. How would you, how would the graph be in the long run then?
Okay, what happens is, let me scroll back up here. Okay, in the short run, firms are willing to lose money in hopes that things will improve, right? But if they don't improve, they're gonna quit. They're gonna say, okay, we can't run this business anymore. When firms quit, they leave the industry. What happens to the industry supply when firms leave the industry?
Decreases overall.
It decreases. So what does it do to the demand for the firms that remain in the industry? That demand goes up. Okay. So firms continue to leave the industry until the demand has risen enough so that firms are at least breaking even again. Okay. So this graph shows what it would look like in the long run equilibrium situation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. By the way, this document is the notes that I'm going to be sharing with you. I just have a little bit more to do at the end. All right. Other questions? Mark, bark if you need to say something.
I'm all good.
Anybody? What's the charge for asking questions tonight? Maeve, come on now. This is an easy question, Maeve. How much am I charging you to ask questions tonight? Exactly. What am I charging to ask you questions next Wednesday?
Our grade?
Well, more than 0, right? But we will meet next Tuesday. So come back then if you want to and bring questions. If you can't make it or you can't get in, you can, as we saw tonight, you can always email me questions, ideally in advance, so I can figure out how I'm going to answer them. But if it's in real time, that's fine too. All right. Well, if nobody has another question, I'm going to start cooking dinner. So I will see you guys around. Good night.
Very good.